Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Anatomy of Movie here on Popcorn Talk Network. We love talking movies. You love listening to movies and interacting with us. And today, we are dissecting San Andreas, the new rock vehicle.
The new earthquake movie, the new disaster film of the summer. That's not a disaster.
That's right. Yeah, that is the voice of Demetri Panos, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, movie fans.
D-Movies 1701.
That's me. Yes,
Twitter.
On Twitter.
Of course, we're at The Popcorn Talk on Twitter, Instagram, all that, and Movie Anatomy for us specifically. If you haven't already subscribed, do so. If you're returning, welcome. If you're new, welcome.
Welcome. And we're live.
We're live. We're on demand. We're everywhere you can get us.
Nice.
Video, we're audio, whatever you need, whatever you want. So San Andreas, let's start with overall thoughts. I'm very excited to talk about this movie.
Me too.
Because it was a disaster movie, and as you said, that was not a disaster. Very much so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a smashing spectacle. And, you know, I got to take you back a little bit, because whenever a movie like this comes out, I always compare it to what I consider the holy trinity of disaster films. And I affectionately call them the shake and bake and upside down cake. Meaning, we've got Earthquake, The Towering Inferno, and The Poseidon Adventures. Those were the movies that, growing up as a kid, that I saw that really, like, they had a great effect on my life. And seeing these disaster movies come out, that I can't help but think, when these newfangled disaster movies come out, I can't help but think and compare them to these, what were really great fun. And Hollywood took the genre pretty seriously back in the day. I mean, those movies had star-studded casts, anywhere from Gene Hackman to Paul Newman to Steve McQueen to Charlton Heston. I mean, Moses, for crying out loud. You know, and they brought all these people together in their various melodrama. There's lots of melodrama going on. Some people lived, some people died. It always amazes me looking at these movies of the 70s that they didn't always end on a happy note for a lot of these characters. My oh my, how things have changed. And you come up to a movie like this, you know, Roland Emmerich, Dean Devlin, you know, always had their hands in their homages, and especially Roland Emmerich with 2012, Day After Tomorrow, you know, or The Day After, or whatever that was called. All these disaster movies always throwing back to the 70s. And now we have San Andreas, which, I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous being a Southern California, you know, living here in Southern California. And, you know, the trailers just made me a little bit nervous. We've actually had some earthquakes leading up to the movie.
That was, we'll talk more, but they pulled back a lot with what happened after India.
Yeah, they did.
A lot.
Yeah. And
it's unfortunate, you know, that's the risk you take.
Yeah, and yet they still did a tactful job marketing. And then I saw the movie, and I realized this is popcorn entertainment here, folks. Like, this is summertime blockbuster spectacle that is done really well. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about story and it's hard to pick on this movie, because it's like picking on someone who's much younger than you. But the movie, at the bottom line, was fun. I had a really good time, and mostly thanks to Brad Peyton. I looked at this guy's filmography, and I'm like going, wow, this guy directed this, because he was spot on. He knew where to focus an audience's attention. so that you were focused here, and then in the last second something would happen that you'd go, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And he did a really good job at pacing this movie and adding hurdles for our characters to overcome that makes these movies exciting when they're done well. And this was an exciting movie.
You had multiple things going on at the same time, and if a scene ended happy, then the next scene, you would cut to another location and it would be very sad.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh. So whatever accomplishments you got certainly were very short-lived initially.
Yeah.
What I liked about it, the only nitpick that I have with this movie is the Daniel Riddick character.
Yeah.
Apart from that, honestly, I don't know. If I was a scientist, could I go in on the science? Perhaps. I'm sure. 100%. But in terms of what it was, I thought The Rock did such a phenomenal job. The fact that he was written to be more than just someone that saved people, that there was emotional depth. The fact that Dwayne was able to play it, and I think he is a phenomenal person. And this really kind of, is he an Oscar contender? No, but he sold that emotion. He sold everything, and he could be vulnerable the way he was, to the level that he needed to be. So I really appreciate that. The girl who plays Blake, I thought she did a good job. I mean, her acting resume has been erased. Even she was in True Detective just recently. She's been in the Percy Jackson films and things like that. So she's not new.
Right.
I thought she did a good job in her interactions with the two boys. I thought that was great, and I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point on The Rock, like, this is the movie that this really is the torch passing along movie. This movie he carries on his shoulders. This is the type of movies that, had it been done in the 80s, they would have looked for perhaps a Sylvester Stallone, an Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Bruce Willis, okay? And part of the reason what made them so successful is that you believed in them, and to an extent within the confines of these types of movies, they could be compassionate. They could have that side to them, and you bought it because of who they are or whatever. This movie, really, for The Rock to carry this kind of an action movie, like, this is his, he's been around for a long time. We could talk about his history career, but this right here, I think, is the movie that really states, I am an action hero. You can point to the Fast and Furious movies, but he's not the main character.
And he's not. He's in
a lot of them. He's only in like 3.
He's only in 3, but even then, he's, I know with Furious 6, he does a lot of the jumping from car to car type thing, and then he stays quiet for a while. He'll come in. He'll be the in wrestling terms, he'll be the pop for the moment, and then he'll quiet down. So it's not like he's throughout the whole movie.
No. In this movie, he is throughout the whole movie. He is the hero, and he does a very good job. He's that actor that you can look upon now as bringing in box office. I mean, this is coupled with the fact that we are in a great spectacle movie, but you believe in The Rock, and I think his fandom already huge. I think people will now look at him more like he can start to carry movies on his own now. He doesn't have to say yes to a lot of stuff. I mean, I think that's one of his great strengths throughout his whole acting career when he decided to leave wrestling, is this guy had no fear. He took whatever role. He didn't mind playing a villain. He didn't mind playing effeminate in the Be Cool. He was hysterical. He didn't mind putting himself in those situations. He rarely ever said no. He would be in family fare type movies, which was great. And then he would be in certain action movies. He would take supporting roles. And he proved that's what you have to do. As a marketer, he's fantastic. He has shown up to CinemaCons and show Wests.
And here's the thing, he hasn't gotten away from his wrestling audience.
No.
He now pays homage to it. I mean, there's so much speculation about what's going to happen at the next WrestleMania between him and Triple H. But what I like is, and I don't want to just make this The Rock fest, even though obviously
but it's good to start off with this.
He is a huge part of it. this is a show that's canceled, but it used to be on TNT called The Hero.
Right.
And you really, it was a competition show, and you had kind of every person imaginable. It started off with 9 people, I believe, and you whittled down to a winner.
Sure.
That they had to go through physical tasks to kind of become a hero, and it was like, what is the definition of a hero? Yeah. And The Rock was the host of this show, and to see him in that sort of way, it really reminded me for this movie because, there are so many sides of The Rock, and then he was able to, channel that into this character.
Right. Yeah. And he, like I said, he's had his Hollywood history and his history within movies and TV, and he's going to be on an HBO series.
All those coming out soon.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a guy that works. He appreciates the work. He loves the fans, and he's a great marketer. Seriously, he will, he'll go out for a Hercules movie and he'll pump it up and he'll talk a lot about it. I mean, he has done, in my opinion, everything right. Like, outside of the wrestling, for his Hollywood career, he has done everything right. And he's, like I said, he rarely would say no to a gig. He would take it because he knew that it would expand his horizons as an actor. And then you put him in this movie, and yeah, he literally carries this movie on his shoulders because you believe in him as this great action star and a hero. And it helped make this movie go really fun, entertaining, great popcorn flick.
And here's part of The Rock's charm is his sense of humor, right? And I thought what this movie was able to do really, really well, and you can credit Brad Peyton, the comedy infused in it. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the opening moment.
Yeah.
Right? Because here you have this girl texting away, and you would, I almost walk away from that as like the lesson is like, okay, texting and driving won't kill you. It's everything else.
Right.
Because she avoids the car. She avoids all those things. And then here come these boulders that take her away. I thought that was the way it was done.
It was very well directed.
Brilliant.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It was a great setup to our first little tumbler that the rock slide happened, and then of course it led to our rescue mission. Yeah. So which again, to open up a movie this way, and what did they call it when they had to take the helicopter in between the two like cliffs and then
tip the hat.
Tip the hat. We have to tip the hat. And of course, now I thought the tip the hat was going to come into play later on in the movie, which sadly it didn't.
I think it did I mean, I thought maybe with the plane and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just showed his versatility.
Yeah.
What I liked, I was very confused initially because you had The Rock just piloting.
Yes.
And sure, with tipping the hat, obviously that became a thing.
Right.
But I was like, wait, why isn't he, isn't he going to be more directly responsible for the rescue?
Oh, but we sort of kind of knew. Like, he was giving it to the guys, but we knew that The Rock, or at least watching it, I know at some point The Rock is going to have to come in to save the day in one way, shape, or form. Because he's The Rock. It's how they build this movie. So, yeah, I mean, it opened up really well. And then, we get the background story, the melodrama, as pardon me to call it, in a disaster movie. But in just let's go, like you talked about the Ian Grufford character, mm-hmm. Dennis.
Daniel Riddick.
Yeah, I sort of had, and I think we might be on the same page. He didn't come off really at all as being the asshole, soon-to-be stepdad kind of thing. He actually really seemed to care about his stepdaughter, Carla Gugino, and he even tried to make nicey nice with The Rock, with the the real father, and he was a rich guy, so I guess automatically if you're a super rich guy, you should peg him as an asshole. But he didn't come off that way at the beginning, and then all of a sudden. And I
thought if you really wanted to make this movie like above and beyond, you would have figured out something better to do with that character and figure out a way to reconcile him and Ray. However, I guess the takeaway, if there is a takeaway, is that actions speak louder than words. And when push came to shove, he ran away and he did those deplorable things versus Ray. He was like, okay, well, I'm gonna save the whole world.
Yeah, but but I actually did believe, like, here are my thoughts, like, on that character, because he was coming off as a nice guy, a sort of kind of a cool guy, and he was, you know, gonna stand behind his word. So I'm like going, okay, it's setting up an interesting conundrum, because we know that Ray and Emma are divorced. We know that it's a hardship. We know that there's a history to why this happened, that the divorce may not have been really totally out of dispassion for one another, but something happened which we learn about. And I'm like going, so how are they going to address the Daniel character? Because he seems like and there's only a couple of ways you can go. You right off the bat, you make him an asshole so that you hate him, which they didn't really do.
No, they didn't, because they had a really good bonding moment on the plane and kind of throughout
on the private jet. Yes,
but that's still nice. You know, the fact that why don't we do this and why didn't I have kids? Well, you know, the architecture is my kids and so on and so forth. So, you know, it hints at coldness, but not to the level of like, oh wow, he's an asshole right off the bat.
Walked off. Yeah, and so like I said, there's one of two ways. You make him an asshole right off the top, which they didn't do. You're gonna kill him off, and that leaves the room, you know, open for The Rock and to, you know, Ray and Emma to repair their marriage and get back together again.
Which happened,
right? Or he continues on, and Ray's character grows a little, and, you know, he says, you know, this is probably best. I'm still going to be in their lives, and they throw in an actress who you know he's going to be happy with at the end of the movie. Those are some of the possibilities.
Let's fix your mic.
Is it wrong? What did I do to it?
I don't know. Hold on. Stand by for technical difficulties.
Sorry.
Yeah. There we go.
Is that better?
That's better.
Now, do you really want people hearing me better?
The people want you.
Oh yeah, they want me to probably shut up. No, so
I know. Here's the thing: from the comments, you're the people's champ.
No,
talk about The Rock.
You're
the people's
that.
champ.
I don't know
like
about
this guy
that,
knows movies.
No, yeah, I don't know, but thank you. No, but I just think that he, you know, they treated that character with such an aloofness, and that if he's going to turn out to be the bad guy, you really want him to get his comeuppance, so that even when Emma leaves that message on his voicemail, like, you know, you left my daughter, if I ever see you, I'll fucking kill you myself. And there was an F-bomb there for the PG-13. And, like, he never even hears the email, like, or the voicemail. Yeah. You know, he sort of kind of haplessly dies. And like, how the hell did he end up like on the Golden Gate? Like, it was a silly way of handling that character, which I thought that they could have done a little bit more with.
And again, that's my only nitpick.
Yeah, mine. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I don't have more. You know, but by the way, I overlook it just as easily. You know what I mean? It was a thing in the moment. Had they been able to kind of do more with it, I think the movie would have been even better. But I have no issues with it. And by the end, when the water did take that bridge, as much as I you know, it became 50-50 because I was obviously concerned for the other people, but I was like, good. Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, I mean, it to me was, I don't know, it was like so anticlimactic, him dying. Regardless, again, you know, my other foibles with this film, they don't take away from the enjoyment, because, like I said, it's like picking on a younger person or something, or you know, it's just, I don't go into the science of this movie. You know, I was gonna bring up certain articles that says, you know, truth versus fiction. I don't care, because I don't go to this movie for a real concrete hard fact. My foible is where it was epic in scope. Like, we covered pretty much most of California. And it was huge, and like I said, spectacle in scope. It wasn't spectacle in scope from a character perspective. Again, I just couldn't help think of those earlier movies that I mentioned where there were a ton of characters that we were following, and we would like some characters, and not everybody survived. This was so very close-knit that in the end, there were basically 4 people that we were following, 4.5 if you want to call Paul Giamatti, but that character sort of disappeared for an entire almost 2 acts, and then he shows up at the end.
Yeah, I did good.
Yeah, I did good. I just felt there was nobody died that I really like. There was they were so intent on ratcheting up the suspense and action, which is fine. And I'm not saying that I always want people to die in a movie, but they didn't give me, I thought his 2 partners at the beginning of the movie, okay, that help him out.
Todd Wilson. Yeah. Todd Williams.
Okay, so I thought those 2 guys were going to be throughout the movie. One of them was going to be the comic relief. I thought one or both of them were dead meat. I thought we were going to see them later on, but they were only in the beginning of the film. That was it.
Let me ask this. Did you ever, at any point, did you feel like Blake was going to die?
No.
Part of me, I want, I don't know, there was a sadistic side, I guess, to me, where I wanted to see, just even from a writing exercise, where would it go if Blake died?
No, because the way that they had set up that death was so heavy-handed. Their earlier daughter had drowned.
I get that, which is why all the more reason why it would have been how do you dig yourself out of that grave if she did die as a writer? And obviously they didn't go there, but these were the types of exercises I was going through in my mind. I
was thinking that it could have been either Ben and or Ollie, maybe one of those characters would, but they never did, and that's fine. I find killing on television, I find that it's becoming way too cliche to start killing off characters in shows. It's just way too easy, and I'm sort of expecting it now. But in a movie, I was thinking that in this disaster movie, they didn't build up characters around our main characters to also care for, so that, when they died, whether it was self-sacrificial or whatever happened to them, scaffolding falls on them, whatever it is, there would have been a little bit more of that drama. But who cares?
Paul Giamatti's friend, he died for a great cause.
Yeah, we saw him for 2 minutes. I couldn't really, other than their bro
but he
moments.
solved the world's problem.
Yes, he did.
Prediction of earthquakes.
Yeah, it would have been nice to maybe have had him in the movie a little longer. Again, at the end of the day, who cares? Because for 2 hours, I was literally going, wow, oh, okay, wow. And I wasn't so much afraid of earthquakes. I was just caught in this whole spectacle action movie. And, it's a perfect summer. It's a near perfect summer movie. It's what this summer so far has been delivering. And it's been delivering on spectacle. It's been delivering on action. And it's been fun. Fun. And this movie, at the end of the day, I walked out going, you know what? I had a really good ride with this movie. The director took it to places with that actually I didn't see coming. So, yeah, and we had, Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti's role as the seismologist, this is a role that he could have phoned in, but I never got that from him. He gave it. He acted. He did a good job. He did not phone in his performance, so I got to give it kudos to that.
What did you just at the top? You described 3 kind of verticals. Let's say of disaster movies.
Sure.
The flood, the shake, and what else?
And this one, well, it was a shake and bake. We got the earthquake, we got the flooding, we got fires.
There you go. So check on all of those.
This one
criteria.
had all of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I thought the flood was a nice kind of added bonus because I wasn't expecting it. Of course it's a real thing, and in that way, and it just added such different layer because now it's no longer just the shake, because by that point we've seen enough of that.
Yes. So
it's to now add let's say a third version of it that's oh wow, this one's the biggest one.
Right.
It could have worked, but I'm glad that we had to deal with the water.
Well, the water also gave us a different perspective of the city of San Francisco, too. My favorite, I have to say my favorite scene was literally I called it the perfect storm moment. In the movie The Perfect Storm, George Clooney with, I forget his name, Mark Wahlberg's in, and he goes, okay, we gotta go. They gotta get the boat over this big rogue wave, and here we are with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We got Ray and Emma in this boat. They gotta try to get it up the crest, and they got the thing slammed, and there are boats that are just flipping over backwards. It's a great scene. And then all of a sudden, as they're getting near the thing, you see this big thing coming over. And I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And boy, how the hell are they going to get like this big like Merc tanker is coming? And I was like, that was just a nice touch, because again, it just ratcheted it up, the excitement and the energy and the suspense, and how they got to like sort of kind of drive around this big tanker that's falling on them on the crest of this huge tidal wave. And then the flood happens. So then we get to drive our boats through San Francisco, and I thought, again, effects-wise, boating-wise, practical effects-wise, it just looked cool. It was just like, oh, that's nice.
A couple of things. Speaking of the effects, there's an article that just came out literally like 4 hours ago, I think. If you want to do a quick search on it, but literally it talks about how uncool the special effects work unless you actually see what the special effects were.
I saw that. Yeah, and it was on. I found it on a site called Gizmodo.com. And they showed, it's like stuff that you get on a Blu-ray, and it showed, okay, we're rattling and do this, and they show, it's great. I have that link that I can, I'll share. It really is a cool behind the scenes peek at the making of this movie. But what I really, reading on the special effects is that they wanted to use as much practical effects as they possibly could. And I think that it's sort of kind of evident here. And, CG for the sake of CG, Strauss says, and he's one of the special effects guys, it's always a mistake. And he said, we made a $200 million movie. Colin Strauss, he was the visual effects supervisor. You can make a $100 million movie look like a $200 million movie. And I appreciate this because there were some practical effects being shot, like that video that you were talking about. And I appreciate that. I like that. There was a ton of, CG in this movie. But again, when you look at the budget of this movie, which was somewhere estimated around $110 million, like, and that's just like the budget, like that, wow, that they did a good job. Yeah. They did a really good job. And, when you get The Rock and Carla Gugino, who did a lot of her own stunts, that's exciting too. I like this going back to practicality. Give model makers some jobs, folks, because, it works. Again, when you looked at those earlier movies that I talked about, whether it's the Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, which, by the way, there is a linkage between Towering Inferno and this movie. The building that Daniel is erecting, that is actually the site of the Towering Inferno in San Francisco. But when you look at those movies of the 70s, there was no CG. There really wasn't. It was all a bunch of stunt work and use of miniatures. They're in the movie Earthquake. If you haven't seen it, just check it out. It's a fun movie to watch. They big use of miniatures, and there's a scene that looks like it could be taking place on a 405 overpass. There's a scene with a cattle truck. It's this big truck. Big payload of cattle, and the drivers during the earthquake, and the overpass collapses, and this cattle truck goes over. I'm telling you, me personally, I think it's as harrowing, and it looks real. And those movies were being nominated, if not winning, for special effects, and they were using models and miniatures. So I love that there's this renaissance of that, because I think it shows. And when you're able to get, before it was like CG is going to save budgetary wise. Well, now it's like, well, I can make a $100 million movie look like a $200 million because I'm using some more practical effects. It's this nice little reversal that I'm seeing in Hollywood. And as a movie fan, I think it's fantastic. Get more matte painters out there, folks.
Yeah, you have to. And what I, the other point that I was going to make, what I liked about this movie, I was very nervous how initially it would have just been in terms of, because we had the helicopter for him, right?
Right.
And so I wanted to make sure that we weren't just in the helicopter all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That we very much he went from the helicopter, then we went to ground,
Right.
then we got in the car, then we got in an airplane, then we got in a boat,
Yeah.
and then we.
The only thing we didn't do is get on a train. That was the only thing we didn't do. But
it was planes, helicopters, and boats.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you want to nitpick. There was a lot of coincidence, like in this movie. Like, they're in the car, they come up to the big trench, and they pass by the old couple. The old guy just happens to be wearing this hat, and he's like, "Oh, let me ask you, where'd you get that hat from?" He goes, "Oh, well, it's my business. I run an aviation store with a plane, and or a sky jumping school." I'm like, whatever. Okay, in these movies, it's weird. It's like I can forgive certain foibles like that because I'm going in for the entertainment. Yep. If this movie didn't entertain, if this movie was just flat out stupid, and we've seen stupid as shit movies like this.
What's better than the line of like, "It's been a while since I got you to second base"? I mean, come on.
I know. And you roll your eyes, but again, if this movie was just god awful, all of these other foibles would be brought up I would magnify that. They would magnify them 20-fold. But instead, I was still entertained because there were aspects of this film that were exciting, and they did stuff that I hadn't seen before, and that's why I went along for this ride. And you're right. I mean, some of the dialogue is a little bit clunky. There could have been some more character. We talked about Daniel. But in the end, 2 hours go by, and I had a good time. And
we've talked a lot about The Rock.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the relationship with The Rock in a bit, but just to take a slight break from The Rock, let's talk about Blake and Ben.
Sure.
Which I loved how I'm Blake too. No, I mean I'm Ben.
I'm Ben.
I thought that worked really well in the way it was kind of developed, and I liked the element of his.
You mean Ben
brother.
and Ollie? Yeah, Blake and Ben, Ben and Ollie. Yeah, the two English brothers.
Absolutely, and kind of their adventure. I thought it worked out really well, and it gave, not that she needed any sort of arc, but I thought they developed the relationship really well, and the fact of her having all this knowledge and Ollie saying eventually, like, she's gotten this far, dude. Really?
Okay, again, another really cool scene where you had the one guy that was trying to take command of the situation and said, "Look, that's just a bad idea. We got to go this way." And it was nice to see a female character like step up, and the mere fact that Ollie had that great thing. He's like, "Well, if I remember correctly, the touch tone dialing phone, getting us over here, doing this, that was all because of her. Like, so I'm going to follow her." And it sort of like dawns over Ben's, Ben, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to follow her." Yeah. So
it was disaster nice. Makes it fall in love.
Yeah, well, and if Speed, the movie Speed, any relationship under that type of duress usually doesn't last. But you're right. Disaster will make you, like we needed a relationship between the teenagers in this movie, but fine, who cares? They weren't annoying characters either.
No, they weren't.
By any stretch. They could have been annoying. You know what I really appreciated this movie for? There wasn't the silly cliched scene like there were like no pets that needed saving. Please don't misunderstand. Not that I have any offense to pets.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure when he's saving all the pets?
That's Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but in like a lot of the earlier disaster movies of recent times, there was always the "come on, Sparky, you can make it," and the heroic leap off the precipice and into the back of the pickup truck, and it's always at the last minute. There was none of that. They could have thrown that cliche in, but they didn't. So I appreciated it for that. So these are the sick things that I sort of think of when I'm watching a movie like this.
Well, no, I mean it's don't think of it as sick, but yeah, you're right. I mean that is a cliche, certainly. Yeah.
And you know what I just realized too is the little boy that played Ollie, for you Game of Thrones fans, he's Rickon Stark. He's in Game of Thrones. Yeah. So again, he's a kid that sort of has a career. But I like those two characters, and they made her journey much more fascinating, I think. And again, they weren't annoying kids. They really were. And she was a smart kid, which I appreciated as well.
And they were able to utilize each other's strengths, and
absolutely,
because all the while it could have been very easy where it's just these two characters dragged her down, like they're almost in her way, but in their own way, even though they weren't. Obviously, she's the leader, she's the most useful. They became useful in their own way,
right?
And they became tools of survival.
Yeah. All within this, again, I felt that the earthquakes in this movie, look, they were spectacularly shot. And, and again, I did go into this movie with a little bit of trepidation, only because we've had some tumblers over here. Earthquakes scare the living hell out of me. They really do. And, there's literally no control. And I was not here for the big one in 94. The way that this movie was marketed as a popcorn film, but the disaster seemed extraordinarily real at certain extents, because I was only getting clips. Once I saw this movie, it's a pure popcorn movie, and I walked away just feeling like I saw a fun movie. And I didn't walk away with the fear that, oh my God. But I can imagine that an earthquake, like when Carla Gugino hits the ground and it's tumbling her, it's tossing her around like a rag doll, and she just keeps on hitting. Some of that was sort of scary.
Yeah, what really got me, they did a phenomenal job, and maybe it's because we'll talk about California's draw to this movie at the box office, certainly, but the original trailers with the California Dreaming song.
Oh yeah. Good job.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because at first, if you don't live in California, they used to run ads for the California lottery that has a similar thing.
Sure.
And I thought, oh crap, can we play that song? Find the version, the slow song, California Dreaming, and just type in San Andreas.
From San Andreas, yeah.
But like they had a version of it initially where us Californians have been waiting such a long time. I'm like, what are we waiting for? Finally, the proposition that will allow us to, the dream of our future. Like, okay, did we really make that drastic a change? We now have the lottery. Yeah. I was like, this is really a commercial on the radio? But then to kind of take that concept and what is such an iconic song, it's been used so many times, most used in Chungking Express, if you ever want to hear that song 500 times. It really became a great tool. You didn't need... The concept sells itself. You just literally just destruction mismatched with this music of California Dreaming. Yeah,
the paradox... The irony of it all. That's not so much the paradox, but the irony of it all with this, and that it's slow. Yeah. And we were seeing, look, I thought it was a great marketing tool. And for the most part, it was the marketing that sold me. I wanted to see this movie, regardless of the tumblers, that I kept on feeling. I think they used it to great effect. And it plays at the very, very end of the movie. It doesn't play during the movie at all, if you notice that. It comes up during the end credits, which was good. I felt, since we're talking music, the score in this movie was fine. Helped precipitate and move along the plot.
I don't know if this is quite the version. Turn it up just a little bit.
I think it is.
It's a little bit faster, I feel.
It starts off slow.
This one starts slow?
It started off, it was a very low bed. It was a very low volume bed when she first started it, but...
Okay. All right, well, there you have it. That's California Dreaming.
Yeah, but it was
San
really
Andreas
good.
version.
Yeah, and it was used very well in the marketing, I think, so...
Yeah,
it's good stuff. I think they did a good job, and we were talking just before we started the show about the marketing. And again, I talk about Southern California and earthquakes, but... on the eve of the release of this film, there was the big earthquake in Nepal about a month ago. And, whenever you have a natural disaster like that can certainly, Hollywood, it can be unfortunate for a big Hollywood movie such as this. And depending on how a studio and or actors can react to this and how the public reacts, you know, Warner Brothers could have had a really big decision to make. Do we pull the release of this film? We don't want to seem insensitive in releasing this movie. Or do we continue to go forward? And we were talking about, you were saying how much they cut back.
They did cut back, and you know, because I know we got asked to do some promote. They wanted to just put it out there, but not shove it down people's throats. And so these were the types of discussions that we even had on Popcorn Talk. We kind of did some promotional stuff with them as well. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's because we didn't shove it down your throats, did we?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have even known that we were doing it. And I thought that was tactful. You know, and I don't know. I respect the movie for what it was. I don't think by seeing it you're at all insensitive to what happened. It just is what it is, and you know, it's obviously it's a very real danger in California, but obviously around the world. I mean, it's just science.
Yeah,
you know, the Earth is shifting. It just is what it is, and natural disasters are happening every year.
Yeah.
You know, multiple times a year.
Yeah, and you know, I wonder that had that tragedy had struck sooner, like say it was 2 weeks sooner or a week sooner, what would have happened? But I do feel that Warner Brothers, you know, upon their marketing and really cutting back, and even The Rock and even support, you know, I didn't feel necessarily insensitive about going to this movie, to this popcorn movie. You know, Hollywood didn't make an earthquake movie, you know, to disrespect all those, like in the 94 earthquake or whatever. But again, if you remember, and this I do remember happening, is that Universal shut down their earthquake attraction out here after that for quite some time out of sensitivity issues, and you most certainly get it. I just always found that it was weird that they had an earthquake attraction out here to begin with, but they were the company that released Earthquake. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they handled that very well. And in the end of the day, like I said, I walked out of this movie feeling not that I just saw like this great drama of, you know, what could happen, as more like a popcorn, kind of a movie we would talk at Popcorn Talk.
Well,
because
regardless,
it's a good popcorn movie.
We'll rebuild it.
Yeah, we will.
I mean, that was, but you know, I mean, obviously this movie's doing well internationally. It has that appeal.
It's been doing really well internationally.
But which I found, I don't know the word for it, but so you know, I hope it's not interpreted in the bad ways of like the American flag comes down. And it's so like it's so American.
I thought Michael Bay. I literally thought they brought Michael Bay in to film that scene of the American flag in slow-mo unfurling, and it was just like, we'll rebuild. And then the camera pulls
and obviously
away.
It's double entendre because they're talking about not only California and you know, we never really got the extent of how much this earthquake got to the rest of it, because I mean, Paul Giamatti's character, he's saying, you know, if you're on the East Coast,
you're gonna feel it.
Yeah.
Yep,
so I don't, you know, we never got that part of it.
There was a quick flash on screen. It was a CNN type channel.
Yeah, they had all the channels
and they had
behind them.
the White House, and the headline read something like "White House quakes" or something like that. But it was literally on screen for 2 seconds. How I even caught it, I don't know. But something was there to say, yeah, they were filming this on the East Coast. I do want to we could talk a little bit about box office on this, because I think that's important, and there was something that I found, you know, upon digging, that I thought was very interesting in regards to Southern California. But all right, so we got San Andreas. It's a movie that opened up on May 29th, released by Warner Brothers. Its estimated production budget is around $110 million, so its all-in budget estimated at about $155 million. Not again. It did look like a $200 million movie to me. It looked fantastic. It did open up number one at the box office. In fact, it exceeded expectations. You know, early prognosticators had this pegged at 45. The movie ended up doing $54.5 million. It was The Rock's highest ever
Congrats to
opening
him.
film. Man,
I'm
congrats
really
for
happy.
him. Yeah, congrats to him. And to the crew, because they made an entertaining movie, but congrats to him. To date, its total gross is about $75 million. Worldwide box office, $130 million plus dollars. That's worldwide. Rotten Tomatoes, we get a 50%. Which doesn't necessarily surprise me in this, right?
I wasn't going off of critics what they thought of this.
No, I mean, if we were in the teens, then it would be that movie that I was talking about earlier, where we would really pick on the foibles a lot because it just made everything else stupider. But 50%, that's for this kind of movie. You bring in with you, or you leave what you brought in with you. And if you're expecting high art out of this movie, then you're not going to like it. If you're expecting popcorn spectacle, it delivers. And the cinema score shows A- on cinema score. So audiences were having a really good time. Now, one article that I found about this movie and its box office, okay? Now, we talked about the fear of earthquakes in Southern California, or in all of California, I should say, okay? One thing to note is that earthquake disaster kits shot up like 100,000% after the movie was released.
See that.
So that business is booming because of this movie. But the other interesting thing is,
hopefully people are smart enough to buffer and have inventory and things like that. Because that's who's coming out top. Whoever foresaw it most.
Yeah. Now I sort of kind of put this into the category of Tomorrowland, whereas for those people who watch Tomorrowland, there's this big thing, the Monitor, that was feeding out negative energy. And that we as a society glommed onto this negative energy, then fully realizing a what do they call it? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy of the destruction of the earth. Okay. So now catch this. 19 of the top 20 grossing theaters were in the Bay Area and greater Los Angeles area. An unheard of statistic.
No Fresno?
There was no Fresno. San Francisco and LA are at the epicenter of the action in the movie. The lone exception was New York City's Ewok Theater in Times Square. The number one theater was Regal's LA Live, which is in downtown, followed by Burbank and Orange County. The AMC Metreon 16, which is in San Francisco, is number 4. Now, if that is not... That's insane. That means Los Angelinos sort of kind of wanted to see, well, what's going to happen to me if I go, if this happens? And they go, and Californians went in droves to this movie. Droves. It's very rare that the West Coast carries that much box office on its shoulder. Very rare.
Absolutely very rare. But, it's so, I equate it, it's no different than if you told me you had a play, that I would go see that play because there's a personal connection to it, right? And whether we want to admit it or not, we all have a personal connection to the idea that we can die at any moment thanks to this natural disaster.
Sure.
And so, very much so. It does not surprise me. I'm glad that you found that and we could talk about that in a real way, but it doesn't surprise me at all. It
doesn't surprise me either, but it does go into that. Because I know some people who might not want to go see a movie about tornadoes who live in the Midwest. Tornadoes are pretty bad. I've never experienced one. Almost experienced one in
but I would say humans,
Mississippi,
we're flies to the oil lamp, whatever, the fire, the heat.
We eat this crap up. We do. I mean, it's why it was, but it's all the way, it's why they were so popular in the 70s. Again, granted, they brought together these all-star casts and they built this melodrama. I didn't even talk about the airport movies because I think they're in a category all by themselves, but those 3 movies were big in their day because of who they brought together and the melodrama that was that those movies put out there. And there was a suspense as to who was going to live and who was going to die, but when we look at a movie like this, you are looking exit polls conducted by CinemaScore, A-, remember, 38% of ticket buyers in North America were drawn in by the subject matter. An equal reason was Johnson, who plays the helicopter pilot. So it was almost an equal measure as to why people went to this movie. And that is, San Andreas skewed. Catch this. This one sort of surprised me as well. San Andreas skewed slightly female. 51% of the audience was female, while 70% of ticket buyers were over the age of 25. Revenue from 3D locations made up 33% of the overall haul, which is a decent sized percentage.
I don't know if this is costume department, whoever, but any of these types of movies, right? You have the perfect mix of just dirt and sexiness.
Yeah.
No, because you do. I mean, I have to channel like our female co-hosts, right? Whether Sarah, Marissa, Roxy, Chloe, whoever. But yeah, every time you looked at The Rock, it was he wasn't in like a suit. He wasn't all done up.
No, he was the rugged man's man. Yes,
he had a little sweat and whatnot, but not enough to be like, he's so dirty. No, it's like it's the perfect combination.
Yep. Now, interesting too. Over-indexed across California as well as Nevada and Arizona. In San Francisco, which in the movie gets hit by the biggest quake in the history of the world. They were up. Their traffic was up 71% above the norm. Los Angeles moviegoing up 62%. Moviegoing also spiked in Las Vegas and Phoenix. Also, they were saying it also overperformed in the earthquake-prone Mexico, opening to a stunning $10 million in Mexico, which has some earthquakes as well. We are prone to love these kind of movies that in reality could kill us. It's like I said, it's almost self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, we want to see this like what will happen. And again, I do think that The Rock definitely plays a factor into going, but I was surprised that 51% of ticket buyers were female. The women wanted to go. So it's usually the other way around, especially when you mention a movie with The Rock in it. It's the guy who's usually dragging the female. Not all females but it's usually the other way around. It could be a date night movie, but 51% female, that's sort of kind of ticket buying power right there. And for an action movie, it means there's hope. It means that they're not only just going to see young adult dystopian movies,
50 Shades of Grey.
or 50 Shades, But I find that interesting in this box office gross. They are going into some heavy competition this coming weekend.
We got three big ones: Spy, Insidious 3, and Entourage. We might have to do a triple header next week.
Yeah, so I think it has legs. I think it has earned like goodwill amongst audiences. Folks, and Marissa, I don't know if you've been keeping tab, Marissa in the booth. Marissa, have you been keeping any tabs on our live audience? If they had any comments or questions or...
Most of the people generally liked this film. They agreed with you on saying that, practical effects is somewhat more effective because a lot of films, can get away with that. But, it helped with a little CG, says Hugh Hoyland.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
When you just got to combine the two.
I agree.
It's the same. We talked about Poltergeist, which I did see the original.
Yeah.
Last week we talked about Poltergeist, and one of the things that I said about that movie, not to go too far off track, was if you watched it without the music, it made it not scary. And obviously, in a horror movie, music is supposed to add the tension.
Sure.
But to a degree, the visuals are still supposed to be scary. And so when you rely just on music as a crutch, it's a bad movie.
Yeah.
So in this case, when you don't have to just rely on special effects or just CG or just whatever to make it good, then yes, the combination therein will be great.
Yeah. And I'll go back to an old Lucas adage, which he sort of kind of just dispersed with as the years went on. But, his whole thing is, you don't use special effects. And this was in a day when a special effect was truly a special effect without CG, is you don't use them. It's a tool. It's a tool to help make your story go forward, but it's not what you rely on to make your movie go forward. A movie like this, of course, there's going to have to be some special effects, but I do respect the practicality of it all. It's refreshing to hear that it actually made the budget cheaper and lower, and like I said, hey, bring back model makers, because I think it's important for our business, and it really does add a tangible effect to it. I just think from a box office perspective, look, I think this movie's gonna make its money back. It's already 130 worldwide. That's really good, and it'll continue to rise. It doesn't hurt The Rock's persona or his stardom. It's gonna, it ups his paycheck, it ups his credibility, and I believe that his days of like a Hercules kind of movie are sort of behind him, and he's proven that given the right set of circumstances, he can carry a movie and make it work. And his supporting cast was fine too. Carla Gugino, I really enjoy. They worked together on Back
to Witch Mountain.
Back to Witch Mountain, which was a Disney
Race to Witch Mountain.
Race to Witch Mountain.
Yes. Right.
And they had a good chemistry in that. I think
fantastic was Kylie Minogue?
Oh, for the 2 minutes she's in the movie, it was like she was there, gone. But I will say this:
she played the bitchiness really well. Of like, why you date my brother?
Yeah, she did that really well. What I really loved is like her demise, because it happened off camera when you think about it, but it was done really well because she goes to a stairwell to escape this earthquake. It's a great scene, by the ways, in that high-rise building in downtown LA. The way that was orchestrated and set up, very well done. And that was actually, for me, a little bit scary, because I can't even imagine being that high and having something like that happen. But
you're supposed to apparently go high.
Right. Well, and I was like, you're sort of going the wrong way. But she goes through the door. She shuts the door behind her. And Emma goes after and opens up the door. And that first step is a doozy. It's just, and I was like, okay, well, the sister didn't make it. Yeah. I was like, wow, okay. It was a very well orchestrated scene.
It was, and it gave a little bit of insight into why Daniel was the way he was.
He had that again. I'll just point back. He had that great conversation. I'm really afraid for her because she's meeting my sister, who can tend to be a little overprotective. So again, he was a nice guy. I was sort of surprised the way that they went with him, because it sort of didn't make much sense for it to happen. But whatever, who cares?
Here's why it didn't make sense, right? It's one thing to put on a mask, when you're trying to gain something.
Yep.
But it's a whole. What would be like? He wanted sex. Like, what? I don't see what the motivation for him to really want to be with Emma, and then also to care for this daughter in that way. Yep. That's why it doesn't quite compute. If he literally, by being this nice, he was going to get another $1 billion. Yeah. 100%, I could see it. Yeah. I'd be surprised if he wasn't rolling out the red carpet for everything like that they did.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah. Well, listen, it is what it is. It didn't ruin my enjoyment of the movie. Oh my God. Yeah, let's talk about the technology of theater technology, if we could. I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, I have to mention, and I think I've mentioned this technology before, the original Earthquake. Charlton Heston, John Williams score, George Kennedy, Ava Gardner, Victoria Principal, before she became Victoria Principal. This movie boasted a brand new sound system that Universal was putting forward. And it was called, and it is still today called, Sensurround. Okay? And this movie was supposed to put you in the middle of the earthquake. And basically, in layman's terms, what it was 4 huge subwoofer type speakers that went from floor to ceiling in your movie theater. And that there was a special track created so that it was like a stereo track, so that when the earthquake hit, whether it was a rumble or whatever, these speakers would kick in. And basically, if you had a Coke with you, or there weren't the cup holders, so you either had it on the floor or you're holding on to the stuff, you can actually see like the little Jurassic Park ripples in your Coke, and you felt it in your stomach. It was just, it's what we have today, and they call it Dolby Atmos or THX, but it was a really loud bass thing. Some people got sick from it and made them they had to walk out of the theater. The theater that I went to was a combination.
It's physical.
It's a physical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it literally affects you physically.
Yeah. And it didn't shake you around like this, but you felt the bass. And and then you come to today, okay? I saw this movie, San Andreas, in XD 3D at that Cinemark Playa Vista Theater, right? Number one, the 3D, I say if it's 3D or not 3D it, see it in the largest screen format possible. And if you can, see it in a Dolby Atmos type of surrounding, because man, oh man, Shevitz, like that was surround. I had great seats in the middle, huge screen. It helped the experience. It really, I was like, oh my God, this is sense around without having, it took 61 speakers for this to happen, where back in the day it was only 4 in whatever movie theater. How about you?
I saw it in 3D. I really enjoyed it. When the boat, you were talking about the crust with the boat. I think it really heightened those moments, because it literally came out of nowhere and towards you. Out of
nowhere that boat came.
But it was coming. You saw it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was great.
You felt it.
You did. What did the people are online? I don't know if they're chiming in, but how did they see it? I mean, because I really think we are living in a really great, fun age to see these kind of movies. Do I need to see Ex Machina in 3D? Hell no. Go ahead.
Speaking to the Kylie Minogue thing.
Yeah.
Right? They did a really nice job of kind of taking us from behind, over the shoulder, right? Some third person perspective.
Yeah.
But then almost going through a wall and giving us a POV, even though it's not a POV. So in terms of that, and then the 3D, you kind of look down at the whole skyscraper. You're like, to your point, that the first step is a doozy, because you see the drop physically,
and you saw people falling. Yeah. You actually, literally from the sides, you saw people falling down, which, again, I'm going to recommend, if you haven't already, like the original Earthquake didn't shy away from that sort of stuff. Yes, you're going to say, if you watch it, there's an elevator scene. It's a little bit hokey because they use some animated blood, and it's truly animated. But they did not shy away from people falling out of buildings. And again, you have to put into context, these were stunts. And in this movie, you're right. I just loved that perspective we got of opening.
We kept going in and out.
And they did that a lot.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, I will go to Brad Peyton, the second unit director. I mean, again, he knew where he wanted his audience's attention focused, and he picked the right places to focus on. And because then he could swipe around and we'd see something else.
Well, what I like is, because I don't think I can remember too many things. Of course, you see POVs and you see it used, but typically the way it's done is your face, close up, switch to POV, back to your face.
Yeah.
This... Number one, I didn't need to see anyone's face to know what they're going through, because you're going through it. And so to kind of bridge the two of, because okay, I want to see from their point of view what the heck's going on.
Right.
And to create that just, it's just a camera move. It's so simple, just pushing in, seeing, and then come back out. It's such a different way of doing it. Subtle, but different. Yeah,
and it was different. And even the way that the buildings are crashing down, like when Emma finally makes it up to the top, okay? Like, again, they turned it from being this true hard like disaster movie to the escapist movie that this is, because then it turns into the last second getaway and rescue. And it was really well done where The Rock flies his helicopter. He's going through buildings, he's hovering, he puts it in manual hover mode, and it stays there, and he drops that stretcher down, and we see her get it, but then the big cloud of dust comes, and then there's a building, and then he ratchets it up because then there's a building following. It's like, oh my God, he needs to lift her up. He's got to get out of this building, out of this dust cloud. We know that she's going to be hanging on, but they stretch the suspense, and it's a really good action set piece that really worked, and it makes this kind of summer movie going fun, regardless of whether it's a disaster movie. This would, for me, it turns it into that fun escapism movie. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a great scene. Now, we could talk about like editing. Bog say, I hope I pronounced that right. This is a guy that worked on The Mummy. He worked on Looper, and he worked on Godzilla.
The most recent?
Yeah, the most recent Godzilla movie. Really good editor, and I really think that he kept the pace going. And we always talk about how director, editor, and cinematographer, they're more or less working in tandem. And, they really are responsible for pacing, look, direction, like what am I focused on? And I think the editing of this movie really was fantastic as well, because with whatever Brad Peyton had in mind, they all kept focus. They really kept it was how they had us, what we were focused on looking at. So my eyes didn't wander. I was looking what's happening, but then they would cut to something else, and I thought it was very well done.
I thought they did something. I thought it was courageous because typically, you would intercut where each character is the height of their whatever disaster, and so you would go from The Rock, trying to save Emma, to the guys, let's say, saving Blake in the car, and you would cut back and forth, and you would cut it faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
This, you sort of let it play out in some sort of sense, or right at the height of whatever it is that you were trying to do. Sure. That's when you cut away.
Yep.
And so I thought it was an interesting technique to do it that way, and to leave for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
And trust that the audience would still know what was going on when you got back into it.
And to your point, I think audiences have been conditioned to that former way because we're watching movies like The Day After. And again, I'm not knocking Roland Emmerich, but we're conditioned that way in movies like 2012, for example, or 2 hours of John Cusack running away from a crack in the ground. That's his style of directing that kind of a movie. And after a while, they sort of kind of all meld into each other, I believe. This movie set itself apart because I really do feel that the directing, editing, and cinematography, they brought us something different, exciting to look at, and made the pacing as such where there was suspense, like, oh my God, how are they going to get out of this one? Sort of kind of like how they would do an action movie. And that's how they made this. How are we going to get away from this building? What are we going to do? And now there's a smoke, and now we're going up this big wall of wave, and oh my God, there's a tanker that's going to fall. How are we going to get out of this? And that's what I thought that they did perfectly. Now look, the Steve Yedlin was the cinematographer. Mm-hmm. This guy did Brick. This guy did Looper. He did the remake of Carrie, which we didn't talk about last week. That was one remake that we didn't talk about when we talked Poltergeist. But in any case,
I thought it was an okay remake.
Yeah, I much better than this Poltergeist, I thought. But he was a good cinematographer, and I'm a big fan of Looper and Brick for that matter. And he made this movie, I thought, looked really good.
Well, Looper, there's that tie-in with Bob Duskay.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, and the acting was, like, as we talked earlier, was fine. This is a good summer popcorn flick. This is the kind of movie I'd rather see in the summer than, say, in the winter. And I think it's big budgeted. I think it delivers. You yes, you suspend disbelief. Is this a great movie? No, but I didn't go in there expecting it to be a piece of art. I expected it to be fun.
The only thing we didn't have is like a beach scene of LA people on like the Santa Monica Pier beach and just being like, oh, look at us sunny Californians.
Right.
You know, thank God it's December.
Yeah, well, thank God it's December. Yeah, no, it didn't. And that's one of my things. It didn't give us enough character. And this is what separates it from caring to, oh, I'm along for the ride sort of kind of thing. That's why I thought it was sort of kind of tight-knit when it came to characterization, because none of our main characters die, which is fine. They all have their scrapes, some of them get hurt. This is what turned this movie into escapism rather than bringing in characters, really liking those characters, and then for some reason or another, they die. And again, trust me, if you haven't seen either Earthquake, The Towering Inferno, or The Poseidon Adventure, check them out. I mean, I really do think they are the godfathers of these disaster movies. And they, and to some extent, are a blueprint to what we're seeing today. But, these movies were made in the early 70s, and they didn't always have to end on a high note. They really didn't. That doesn't happen today.
This was the highest note possible.
You were not going to kill off The Rock. The Rock.
I didn't know if I should salute or what.
I thought it ended fine. Yeah, I just said, of course it's going to end this way, But it was good. It was a fun movie.
All right. Anything else that we want to touch on?
I think we
covered a lot.
I think we covered a lot in this movie. Marissa, are there any questions or any other comments that you found interesting from our listening / viewing audience that's with us right now?
Well, it seems like people enjoyed Alexandra Daddario. I hope I'm not butchering her name.
She plays Blake.
Yes. People.
Now, is it because they're dirty, or they just actually liked her acting?
No, they generally liked her performance, and they're kind of excited. She might be the next Wonder Woman. So.
Yeah, I mean, she's got these. She's got these stunning eyes. They're very unique eyes, and again, she comes off. I thought as being obtainable. Is that fair to say without sounding like a pervy old man?
Our fans now, they just went up in their seats.
Yeah. No, I think that...
I can kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
And then also Joseph Ortiz in the chat says he preferred 2D.
Okay. Does that mean that he saw it twice, or he just saw it in 2D?
Probably 2D. And then Jorge Limas, he's from Monterrey, Mexico. He says, I agree, I do not need 3D. Love the show. Greetings. From Mexico.
I mean, it's one of those things. Do you need it? It's going to be a good movie regardless. It's just why not pull out all the stops? If you're going to go and have some fun, go have some fun all the way.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, like your premium large screen format screen.
By the way, just so you know,
great sound.
It's not like him and I get a kickback for this.
No,
not at all. So I'm not trying to upsell you just to upsell you guys in any sort of way.
With me, if you are regular watchers of this show, with you, it really is about the movie going experience. And no matter what type of a film that I'm watching, I don't need to see a comedy, necessarily in 3D. Like I said earlier, I don't need to see Ex Machina in 3D. But when you're going to put out a big spectacle movie, and again, I say that 3D really worked in Avengers. I thought it worked to a T in Mad Max. I thought San Andreas really benefited from it. Tomorrowland, it wasn't in 3D, but I did see it on a large, I saw that too in XD. And, whatever reels me in. I have a big size, big screen TV at my home, and, but it just doesn't capture, it doesn't do it justice to when I see a movie like a San Andreas or a Mad Max on a big screen. And if they have 3D, and I do believe that technology has come to a point where they've made it better. Movie theaters, they're scratching, believe it or not, movie theaters are scratching and clawing for your business. And they have made the change. Before it was let's not dump money. Why do we need to dump money into our theaters if the movie-going audience is continuing to come? Well, The audience has become fragmented. You've got your Netflix and all your other subscription type things out there. Now it's taken that for movie theaters or exhibitors to wake up and say, you know what, we got to give them an experience that they're not going to get at home or on their iPad. And they really are stepping up by brighter projection systems, having the studios make the best possible 3D, not just doing and spending a month, a conversion. A lot of these are conversions, but they're not spending a month. They're spending months at a time making sure that it's right. You're getting great DPs and cinematographers and directors who are sort of kind of filming and making sure that the aspect ratio and what's in the foreground is equally as important as what's in the background, and depth of field. I think now is the time, and it's only going to get better. And that's why I love going to the spectacle. That's why as a kid, I went to see a movie in Sensurround. That's why I did it. And there were like four. There was Earthquake. There was The Battle of Midway, another Charlton Heston universe. They were all Universal movies. There was the movie Roller Coaster, and there was the revamped, retweaked, the pilot. Believe it or not, the original Battlestar Galactica. They took the pilot television show, which was like a 2-hour movie, and they sort of retooled it, and they released it theatrically. And they released that in Sensurround. And I believe those are your 4 Sensurround movies. Maybe I'm missing one, but that's why I went as a kid. I saw all of them because they were in this great, fun way to see a movie. That's why I went to 70 millimeter movies, because it was so big. It was awesome. And then when 3D reemerged in the 80s, I went to go see those dopey 3D movies. So any gimmick, so long as it works, this is what the movie-going experience is like. And, when you see it with a big audience, and when you see it with a grand audience and people who are really into it, they'll applaud. And that's what movie-going's about. It's exciting. So I will try to see it. If it's offered, I will try to see it in that format. So there you go. There's my movie-going experience soapbox. I hope you folks feel the same way. Or maybe you don't.
Sounds like maybe not, but hey, you know what? At least you saw the movie, so that's
getting out and seeing the movies is important.
All right, so that about does it for us this week. Thank you guys for joining us. If there's some parts that we didn't quite get to or that you want to discuss more on, that's what the comments are for.
Who are you calling a moron? What?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
You said moron. You said, I said, who you calling a moron? That's okay. Sometimes the jokes are just for me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. D-Movies 1701 on Twitter for Demetri. Panos.
Thanks, movie fans. Yeah, follow.
And, of course, here at Movie Anatomy, follow us there, or The Popcorn Talk. And we've got Aloha coming up right after this, so it's a completely different direction, counter programming there, but we're doing it, and hopefully you guys join us for that. In the immediate future, we've got Entourage, Insidious 3, and more than likely Spy.
Yeah, which I've seen already, and it is hysterical. I saw it a month ago at CinemaCon, and Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy. It's hysterical. It's funny.
There you go. And for me, one of the more anticipated movies, Jurassic World.
I can't wait.
So we got that
There's
on the
legacy
horizon
in
after that week, and that's just the upcoming 2 weeks that we're talking about. So and of course we'll be here for Star Wars.
Yes.
When that comes out.
Unless that 9.7 hits.
Before Star Wars, of course. Thank you guys for joining us, as always.
Thank you, folks.
If you're new to the show, please continue to come back. Check back in with the movies that we're doing. We cover so many, so we try to keep a current roster. Sometimes we go back in older movies. But if you don't see one that you're particularly liking at the moment, because it's just that nothing excites you, it's okay. Come back and you'll see the ones that we've done that you may like. So, thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next Anatomy of Movie Dissection.
Bye.
From From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.